going to use all three names. Michelle Brady Stone, welcome to the Disciple of Christ podcast.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here. Thanks for the invitation.
I felt a little bit of inspiration beforehand. I just decided, pack up the guitar, bring it just in case. I get the feeling that it might be used a little bit more. I hear that you sing a tune or two.
I have been known to sing a tune or two.
Well, then let's start with that. Give me a little bit of your background growing up. Are you a native to Utah?
I am. I grew up on the border between East Mill Creek and Holiday. My dad was the bishop of the ward.
There we go.
My whole growing up. I'm the youngest of 9.
Oh, my goodness. And you had to outdo your mom. Okay, well, we'll talk about that, but keep going. Youngest of 9.
Yep. My mom is somewhat well known among those who know her. She's a children's music composer and just...
What are some of the songs people would know?
So I Lived in Heaven is her song that's in the primary hymn book, and then the primary song book. She wrote I'm a Mormon, When I Grow Up I Want to Be a Mother, and then her better known songs are like Safety Kids and the Standin' Tall series and I'm a VIP in My Family. There, we could go on and on. Anyone out there, it's too bad you don't know Bright Music because we would be having a sing-along right now.
We might be doing a little bit of that later.
Yep.
Tell me, what was it like being the youngest? Because I'm number 2 out of 5, and I remember there's something different about the pecking order. I noticed personality differences in the siblings. What's it like being the youngest? Because you probably got some that are teenage ages when you're just a little gal.
My so there's 20 years between my oldest sister and me. So, and we're very close. We're probably, she's probably my closest sister, and so it's really, and her daughter is just a year younger than me, a year and a half younger than me. So it was really fun. My nieces and nephews were my cousins, and yeah, it was fun. I loved getting together with a family growing up. It was.
What were you say were some of the most looked for activities, the most sought for activities? Was it music? Was it outdoors? What kind of stuff did you guys like the most as a family?
Well, when you have a big family, there are as many personalities as there are. My sister that's just older than me, so there were 7 close together and then 7-year gap and then my sister and then me. And she sews and cooks and did... What was it? Future Homemakers of America.
Oh, wow.
And I was the...
I wonder for how long they've done away with that program. We need it.
The Wool Growers Association, she entered that every year. She was a brilliant pianist. And my family's culture was piano. My dad was, my mom and dad composed music together. And, so they taught piano lessons for all of my older siblings growing up. So I didn't play the piano, but I played every sport that I could find. And
what did you find yourself having the most natural passion for? Music, sports? What was it that you felt like?
I think sports.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. I was the yearbook every year, athlete of the year. That was me.
What were your favorite sports? What did you pursue the most?
Well, basketball was always my favorite sport because it's so active and aggressive and you can run so fast and make great moves.
I have to ask this. It might not be recorded, but if you had the ability to simply, bam, go back in time and get a certain play or a certain game recorded and presented to the world, what would it be?
What do you mean? Like my best play I ever had?
What was your moment to where it's like, I performed there the way to where I was at the top of my game?
Oh, I have no idea because it's just constant. I played soccer as well. Okay. And I can't think of one. I just loved playing. I just loved the playing.
Were you competitive to the point to where you hated loss? I know some people have that inside of them.
There can be demoralizing loss, but it's more if your coach is really hard on you or your teammates are really, it's more, I'm very relationship oriented. So I really like winning, but probably more important to me is getting along, is feeling like you did well and you bonded as a team and bonded with your coach. I was more demoralized by negativity than I was by loss.
Feeling like you let somebody down or
like people are mean. I don't like it when people are mean.
I don't think any of us do. Well, I guess some people thrive on it. Yeah. And you still go running regularly.
Oh, I love to play basketball. I love basketball.
I don't understand you freaks.
Volleyball and soccer.
Well, see, now the competitive sports, I love that. I compete quite naturally, love competing even at sports that I'm not good at. But I never exercise just to exercise. When I see people go running, I'm like, is there a bear or something?
Well, necessity is the mother of discipline, shall I say?
Yeah.
So it's important to stay healthy. It's good for mental health as much as anything else. And it's good for, I went through so many years of being pregnant and sitting on the sidelines and feeling like I was just an old lady.
Okay.
That, you know, as soon as I started to, I was like, I don't want to feel like this the rest of my life. I want to feel young, healthy, active, and strong. And I like that.
No, I can imagine that, because it sounds like there's some space, 20-year space between your oldest sibling and you as the youngest. What were the differences like between you and, I don't have enough fingers to count how many you've brought into the world.
Oh, what are the differences? You're talking about my children now?
What are the age differences? Well, in other words,
Oh,
do I have this right that 13 children?
Yes. Yeah.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So my my oldest, let's see if I'm going to get this right, because I haven't, you know, we're not raising my youngest too. So right now my youngest living is 25 and my oldest is 24, and I should have a 2-year-old and a 1-year-old. So
Okay. Oh, wonderful. And spread out a little ways.
Yeah, well, there are 13 in there, so
Yeah. And I asked very much if we could put that picture behind us. It's wonderful. I think it is by divine design that some of the greatest sources of earthly happiness happen because of those familial bonds.
Absolutely. It's one thing that really I hope my voice can be used for at some point is to give young women and young men permission to want to be parents.
Oh, yeah.
I think that is something that's so tragically lost in our society today. I think that the idea that that somehow motherhood is bondage and you shouldn't have to, you know, I think that is a tragedy that we need to straighten up, because motherhood is marvelous.
It is. Fatherhood is as well. I'll have to take your word on motherhood. You're not the only testimony that I've heard on that subject. But like, I've had super duper fun in my younger years being an active traveling musician, doing lots of fun stuff, traveling, performing. I've never had anything that I consider as much like real joy and like legitimate long-term fun as having little kids. I got 3 of them, and they're still super fun ages, 9, 7, and almost 4.
Oh, that's so fun.
But it is,
I haven't yet found an age I don't love. I have a couple of my favorite ages, but in general, like, man, the babies, the toddlers, the little kids, and then teenagers are just gorgeous. I love teenagers, and now having adult children that are my actual friends, like, it is great.
Tell me if this is the same thing that you're saying, like, promoted in the world quite avidly, inside and outside of the church. Not inside the church so much. There's still enough like family values that are promoted, but by and large, the idea that Western young people shouldn't really consider serious relationships until age 30 or more.
Oh, thank you, Biden.
And now he might have been on camera saying that recently, but that sentiment is expressed quite a lot to where almost it's considered irresponsible to bring children into the world in your youth.
Yeah, and I just had a little conversation with one of my sisters-in-law who motherhood wasn't really her thing as like it was mine. So I don't think that there's something that's right for everybody, you know?
Yeah.
And so, but I am uncomfortable with this. I would never go up to people and say, you should have a baby. Yeah. You should have a baby right now. So I don't know why it's okay for other people to go up and say, you shouldn't have children until you're 30. That should be considered just as rude.
How are you going to pay
and
for
just
it?
as inappropriate. Right. Mm-hmm. And the fact that we feel like, I don't know, I just heard it said that people are saying, oh, the economy is so bad, so we have to make sure that women have the right to abort their children, as if that's what women want, is to be so impoverished that they have to kill their children. I mean, the insanity of this. Mm-hmm. So I'm a little bit forgetting your question, other than to say, about people that say that.
Yeah.
I just think...
Put it off until...
Well, you know what? I had a conversation with a cute family recently in an airport with 2 daughters that were, adults, and I was talking, they kind of were of that mindset, and I was talking about my family, and they both were actually really, I think, surprised. And I would hope, they really expressed their gratitude to talk to someone who loves being a mother and who promotes it and gave them permission to, in a way, because and one of them talked about how she was like all about babies in her 20s, but now that she's in her 30s, she's, and I'm like, there's a reason that we want to have babies in our 20s. Like, do it. You do not have to You do not have to have all your ducks lined up, and you won't necessarily be happier. It was so fun living as students in apartments packed together with a bunch of other people with their little kids, and we'd all go out in the grass of our apartments and let the kids play. And I never was lonely, and we had friends. My kids had friends. I had friends, and that's so much better than being in your house in the suburban neighborhood before you have a baby. That's a lot harder in a lot of ways. So
you're making me have flashbacks right now of growing up with BB guns and siblings by my side.
Yeah.
Hunting little crawly creatures and stuff like that. Oh, memories were made.
Yeah. I'm sure with 13, I'm sure my kids have a lot of memories that I have no idea of. So more and more come out all the time.
So let me ask this. Where did this get instilled? You're the youngest of 9. Give me a little bit of what family like was life and the spiritual aspect of it. Do you feel like it was just the natural road, what people consider the accolades that I've heard so far? It's about as idealistic Mormon family as you can imagine. Dad's bishop, youngest of 9, in the heart of Utah, building up Zion. How did you interpret it in your younger years? Try to think back before age 8.
I think I had a great upbringing growing up in the church. I think that I always felt loved, which is the greatest gift that we can give our children. Of course, every family has its stuff, and every parent, isn't perfect, and every, there are hard things in my family. But my mom and dad, I just think the world of them. My dad was a humble man who just strived with all of his might to do what he believed was right. I think he was maybe a little too hard on himself sometimes, probably, but he was just gentle and kind. My mom was a little bit spunkier, I would say. Had a little more, she's a little more like me, maybe. And
how would the spunkiness manifest, aside from the obvious, a little bit like you?
I think, my mom's so fun. So my mom struggled with her weight, and my dad liked skinny women, and so my mom would make some chocolate. And if my dad ever was like, who made this? My mom would say, one of the girls, and she would take us to like, I remember one time we went and played tennis. I was just little. We went and played tennis on a Sunday. My sister sprained her ankle really badly. And my mom had, my dad was always in high calling. So my mom filled those hours. So my mom just was like, that's why we shouldn't have done this on a Sunday. She just was a little bit rebellious, but but more importantly, that's not that interesting. My mom was always a learner. She was striving. She would take me. I went and heard Avraham Gileadi speak when I was just, I don't know, maybe elementary school or junior high. I went and heard Cleon Skousen. She met Hugh Nip.
She's exposing you to the best radicals in the church.
Well, she was always seeking and learning, and I think been really relatively open-minded and just wanting to I just think my dad passed away, I think 15, 16 years ago. And, but my mom still just fills her time, and she raised 9 children and then went on to sell over 15 million albums with my husband, with my dad, their company that they did. So I just think that they're cool people, I feel really blessed. So, and then, I guess growing up, I know that some people could say I was raised on the song, when I grow up, I want to be a mother. And but I have a sister that has 1. I have another sister that has 2. Everyone does their thing. This is what I was meant to do. This is, and I always tell people I'm way more normal than my resume. In high school, I just wanted to be popular. I just wanted to be, I never had an idea that I would grow up to be so unusual, to have 13 babies and give birth at home and homeschool them.
Did that seem unusual at the time? In other words, as more babies are coming into the household, it's perceived as unusual now. It's actually something that people love to brag about, especially in the Mormon community. Michelle Stone, 13 kids, because it's wonderful.
Oh, do they? I'm glad it's a good thing, not a bad thing.
I would say the circles that I run in, it is admirable. There's nothing but gratitude. And here's some of the reasons why. I make sure that I never give a fluff, insincere compliment. I really, really do mean this. You've got a moral compass, and I know that you have standards that you want to teach to your kids. I can't think of a greater force for good coming in from an individual, rather than bringing children into a home to where you're loved, you're protected, because the whole finances of it actually doesn't take a whole lot of financial success for children to get moral standards, respect towards others, and hopefully, most importantly, a relationship with God where they live in a way to where I intend to be accountable before my Heavenly Father someday.
Yeah, I think so. I think, well, I have to, I do the podcast I do. My husband doesn't terribly care to be involved. So I think that, and
well, these spouses is like, come on, honey, let's go rabble rousing.
Right. Well, he just does his thing, and this is my thing, and he'll sit and listen for a few minutes nicely if I want to tell him something I learned, and then he's like, okay, enough polygamy, and he has provided for this family, and man, what a gift it is that a good man gives to a good woman to allow her to raise her children. I think that that's another thing that we've just turned upside down. I have never felt like my opportunities were diminished in any way by staying at home with my children. And I was free to direct my own time and to learn and study. And, my time in many ways has been my own more than my husband's has been, as he's gone to work every day. Yeah. And so I think that while I'm talking about motherhood, I can't leave my husband out of it, because he's a great, great man. And I've been so thankful. I wouldn't have my family if I didn't have my husband who supported and provided for us and loved us and raised us, And so it's a partnership.
It's easy to recognize that it's a divinely designed sort of union.
Oh yeah, it is, and it's hard. We have not had an easy marriage. We've had to struggle and work and grow. It's been a challenge for sure.
Before we go to the marriage, let me bring it back to the younger years. At what did it just feel natural from the time that you're young? You already felt the love and the security, and that's wonderful, because there's so many psychological issues that are avoided later in life just by that love and that stability. Did you feel a natural connection with God when you were a little girl, or is that something that grew later?
So, these are great questions. I feel, you always have that little bit of internalized shame. So I'm being vulnerable. So
nobody's watching.
No one
don't
here
worry.
will judge me.
It's just between you and me.
Well, I prayed all the time as a child. I remember I was the catcher on my fast pitch softball team, and I would send the signals to the pitcher, and I would always just be praying like, Lord, help me make this catch. Lord, help me. And I know that's, or whatever, help me with this test, or, I just always, and I guess people can judge that. And, I've had a lot of hard things in my life. Anyway, so that's why this is vulnerable to admit kind of who I am. And so I've always, I think I've always just been prayerful, but that doesn't mean I've always been like an easy kid, or I was a good kid. Yeah.
But like the caring, it sounds like you would naturally kind of carry a prayer around in your heart. I
think I really did. And I guess I used the softball example because I just have such distinct, like of just the little things. Like, of course, every time I was taking a test, or when I was, oh, Lord, help me to remember this answer. I know it. I just kind of would have a conversation with the Lord often.
How would you, let me ask this, how would you recognize responses coming back? Because it's one thing to offer a prayer continually. How would it manifest hearing responses or recognizing them?
Yeah, I'm not sure that I paid quite as much attention, other than just kind of feeling like, in a way, being in prayer doesn't have to be, do you know what I mean? Like I still often will just be kind of praying, and I don't know, like nothing's coming to mind from my younger years of exactly hearing responses other than I knew I could talk to God, and I wouldn't have kept doing it if it didn't feel fruitful, if it didn't feel like it was connected, And I mean, because it would always be, thank you, Heavenly Father, or, like there was, so I guess just, I don't know, it was a young faith, and so I don't know that I know more than that looking back at it.
I know that there's just something beautiful about it. My little 7-year-old girl, like even a year ago, when she'd be in her bed, but she wasn't tired and falling asleep yet, and I would hear her making up impromptu songs to Jesus.
Oh, that's so sweet.
And it's beautiful, and it's inspiring for me. I think there's something natural about it. Mm-hmm. As you're turning into adulthood, did you feel your faith grow, change? What happened?
So, an experience that I remember stands out to me from, I think I was 12 years old. I was in 7th grade, and I was really struggling with feeling, I don't, you know how you just go through different things at different times. I was feeling so much like I was not as good of a person as I wanted to be. There wasn't anything specific. I was 12, 7th grade. Okay. And I remember even just crying to my mom, being like, I just am not who I think I should be. There wasn't any particular, I mean, I was 12. There wasn't any particular sin or any, I just felt, I guess, and I now recognize it as the Lord giving me that opportunity to just be in a state of repentance.
Yeah.
And I was really struggling with it. And I don't know if it was just for a day or if it had lasted for a while. I can't remember, but I do remember going down into my bedroom and I was just crying, and I prayed and was told to open my scriptures, which I think prior to that, I hadn't had necessarily the discernment to know what was God, what was me, I remember like being just overwhelmed with love that I now would very much recognize as a divine gift of charity. But back then it was just like, I love my mom so much. You don't necessarily know the differences. Yeah. But I do remember just being told to open my scriptures, and I turned and I opened, and I do not remember the scripture or exactly what it says, but I know that it said, in my mind, how I've turned it to myself now, because I doubt it said my daughter. It was probably my son. But I know it said, your sins are forgiven you. And like, I can't remember the scripture, just the messages I got is that I was forgiven and I was known and I was loved, and the Spirit was overwhelming. And I have always that changed me in some very important ways. So I remember that experience. But then I went through high school and just wanted to be rebellious and cool and thought,
what was the Michelle Brady form of rebellious?
Oh, shorts that came to the middle of my knee. I mean, that came up.
Because I'll tell you what, there's no shortage of podcasts that talk about rebellious years in a way to where you would need antibiotics just to listen to it. Oh, so in other words,
I was a good girl.
Yeah, I see. When I hear
I probably liked boys a little too much, but there were no talks to the bishop,
But it's amazing to where you recognize it as rebellious as you look at it now, because you realize I was set with.
I'm talking about the state of my heart more than my behaviors. But go ahead.
You kind of felt like, the state of your heart. Here's what it sounds like to me. Tell me if this is it. I know that they want slightly different standards from me, but I'm going to make sure that I show them I'm not a cookie cutter, toe the line exactly.
My parents weren't. It wasn't rebellion to my parents. It was more. I don't want to just be one of the crowd. I grew up in, super Mormon Salt Lake City, and I didn't want to just be one of the cookie cutters. I wanted to be different somehow. So it's dumb. So
can you identify why that was important?
No, I think I always wanted attention. Maybe I think I didn't want to just be like everybody else.
Because I hear that personality type, and I really do think that it's in large part influenced by the youngest of that many siblings.
Oh, it could be. Well, and I'm the 7th girl, and there were 2 boys, and I was raised on the story that when I was born, my parents burst out laughing because it was the 7th girl, and I was so into sports, and I think I always kind of wished I was a boy, maybe a little bit, and so just being. Like I would go crazy in Young Women where we would just do crafts and so I guess that was my way
I'm glad you were born then and not now, because there'd be too much influence to do something about you.
Do you know, I promise you, I am so profoundly aware of how lucky I was to be raised in the 80s and 90s and not now. I would have been prime target.
Well, because it's pretty obvious right now the issues of transgenderism, and not only that, but government policies that are just permanently changing young people in a way that's we're going to be seeing the repercussions of it as this next generation. Yeah,
I have 13 children. Yeah, I am such a happy woman and mother, and if that had been taken away from me when I was 12, 13, 14, I cannot even imagine. I think it's devastating what we are doing.
Well, so you've got interests that are considered more masculine, the competition, the sports and things like that. Did it ever result in confusion about what's my role in life?
Yeah, I think so, because, so like I wanted to be like Joseph Smith. I remember, this is so funny.
In what way?
I don't think about these things. So I'm like going back and remembering these things
I'm
for
doing
the
a good
first time now.
job.
You are, but it's like, oh goodness. I remember distinctly sort of a countdown that I would do, like, okay, I have 4 more years till I'm 14 and I need to, do you know what like 14 was the age that Joseph Smith
I'm going to have
the
my
first
come to Jesus
vision.
moment by then.
Well, I kind of was like, not in competition with Joseph Smith, but kind of like he set the standard that I need to live up to.
Yeah.
So, I've got 3 more years. You know, I kind of had that going on a little. So and then I would read the scriptures.
What did you think would happen? This countdown's happening. What was for?
That
what?
God would
Reveal himself.
use me. That God would use me. That God would whatever like of course I'm just like Joseph Smith. Whatever.
Well, let me ask you this. I'm going to ask it 2 different ways. Did you recognize it at the time, or do you start to recognize it now? The experience at 12, we're feeling that distance from God, and then hearing His voice, getting filled with His love. Do you recognize that as Him making sure that you had an intervention or contact with Him in a way that you would recognize and would change you?
Yeah, sorry. Just
You're good.
I haven't connected those 2 things before, the countdown to 14 and that experience at 12. But I do, I guess it just, the goodness of God, like even you saying that makes me go, oh, maybe, you know, like, because I've just known ever since that experience, I've known that God existed in a profound way that I could never legitimately doubt. Like I've definitely gone through all of the, you know, and a feeling that you have, no matter how profound it is, isn't there all the time, right? So like I said, I wasn't focused. Yeah. Like I was kind of rebellious in my little good Mormon Utah girl way in my teens. But I do think that, like I think that God, you know, sends us here with a purpose and reveals Himself to us. And I do feel like I was blessed to receive that.
Yeah, because I look back, here's what I'm hearing from you so far, because I can recognize it in my own life. Every righteous desire that I've had, my Heavenly Father will help it to grow. And sometimes it's not until later in life that I recognize, holy cow, He blessed me with everything I asked for.
Oh, wow. Okay, that's a cool thought. Yeah. Yeah, I actually would have to agree with that. Like, I'm overwhelmed by what my life is. I would have never, you know, I mean, yeah, I remember as a girl in college, I don't think I was married yet, and I was shopping. Maybe I was married. I don't think so. I was shopping, and I got talking to this woman that was, you know, and I found out that she was, had 12 kids and she had a mother's helper. And I remember, like, she was quite wealthy. And I remember just this feeling of like, that's the perfect thing to do with money. Like, you know what I mean? I was like, she's so lucky, you know, but it is good to know you can still have a big family even if you don't have money and a mother's helper, you know. But anyway, I can't remember why I went into that. There was a point I was making, but anyway, sorry, is that a sidetrack?
We're allowed to do as many of those as we want, because we were talking about like recognizing that we do get everything. Like
yes, that's what it was.
The righteous desires that we pursue.
Yeah. Like I didn't know that I wanted a big family. I thought I wanted 8, you know, which is a big family, but less than my mom had, you know. Yeah. I didn't. And so it is, I guess I'm just remembering, oh, I did have that desire. And, you know, I've never had the mother's helper, but I have the family. And that's what I thought was so wonderful. Like, I think meeting her gave me permission that you could have 12 kids. Whoa. You know, so everyone, you're meeting me. You have permission.
I still remember I had a Mexican bishop. Most of my adult life has been in Spanish-speaking congregations. And I remember Bishop Ochoa there in Salt Lake City area. I was telling them, yo soy el segundo de 5. I'm number 2 out of 5. And his response was, pues, I'm the youngest of 9.
Oh, okay. 9.
Yo soy el menor de 9.
Yeah, that's great.
Like, and it's wonderful. We got to build up the army of God somehow.
Well, I think so I want to be really careful because it is not a competition, and there are the right reasons and the wrong reasons.
And there's those who go through the heartache of not having
being
kids.
able to have, right. And I'm glad you brought that up because that is, you know, like that's not a challenge that I've had, and I'm so thankful.
Well, let me just point out, in our society, it is easy for people to be looked at as, if I don't have kids, am I really a part of this church the way that others are? I went through a divorce in my 20s to my stake president's daughter. And I remember, I remember the feeling like, cause I had my come to Jesus moment before I turned 16, changed my life. And my only desire, like coming home from being a missionary, is get married, have Mormon babies, build the kingdom. And going through a divorce, people didn't know how to talk to me. Hi, Jake. How are you? I'm like, fine.
As you've got broken written across your forehead.
Oh, my goodness.
That's hard.
And in other words, yeah, I know that the hurt's got to be there. And I recognize about you. You and I both got it. You love people when you first meet them, don't you?
I hope so.
Yeah.
I think
I noticed that because I don't want anybody to think, like, if somebody tunes into this and they're going through the heartache of, well, I didn't have kids and it just didn't work out for me, that there would be any feeling of less love towards God, less importance in his kingdom.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah.
Like more than anything else. See, it's kind of, I'm not usually.
It's joyous.
I don't usually feel like I get positive feedback from my large family, right? And so I guess we're sitting, I'm enjoying, but so much more important than that is that we are all on our own path. Yeah. And if there's any, like I know we joked that I have more than my mom, but if you're ever, I mean, if there's any competition involved, or if there's any, like, so let me tell you. Can I?
Yes,
can
please.
I tell you?
Oh,
okay,
please.
my story. So I was like, just so gung-ho into whatever I was doing. That was why I was so good at basketball, because I was so fast and tried so hard. And maybe I wasn't.
It sounds like you've got a level of focus when you choose to do something.
Maybe, or just intensity and a desire. Yeah, maybe that. And so in school, I, got straight A's and put my whole heart into it.
Well, you and I are quite different there. Keep going.
And then, I got my full scholarship to BYU, which is where I wanted to go. And then I have a sister that's not friendly with the church at all, and has some hard feelings. And she was the influence in me that was like, do not get married, do not have kids. And, so the cool part of me was going to be, I wanted my master's degree before I got married. I wanted,
Oh, yeah.
And my whole life I wanted to go on a mission, just planned on it. And so when on my first date with my husband, who I tried to say no to, but I'm too darn nice. I tried
Louise,
to say
to a fault. Now you're stuck.
I remember holding the phone going, just say no, thank you. What time? And so I went on.
He knows that now?
Oh,
because if he watches this now, he knows.
Yeah, I love you, babe. So he played basketball, and he's like way taller than I am. Okay. So that's my criteria, I guess.
There we go.
That's how we met. But anyway, that first date, I was told that he was who I was supposed to be married to, that we had, and I was mad. I was mad.
I've already got plans.
Yes. It took me a whole week because I didn't even know. I didn't even know if I thought he was cute, or if I didn't even know if I was in love with him yet. By the end of the week, I knew I was in love with him. But anyway, so I went from this gung-ho to all of a sudden I'm married, and then what do I do? And then, we planned just like everybody, you're going to wait 2 years to have a baby. I was 20 and we were going to wait 2 years. But then as soon as we got married, I was like,
9 months and 2 weeks later.
Well, it was like, what is this feeling? Like someone's supposed to come. I just knew someone, and it was the first time I'd ever felt it. So it was very new to me. These were huge. Like the answer to marry my husband, I was in this spiritual place. It was a week-long spiritual experience of piece after piece after piece falling into place, being told this is who I was going to marry. And then I'm supposed to have a baby. And anyway, you interrupted. I'll tell you the point of my story.
Because I'm just trying to... how are you interpreting it? In other words, I like how you're describing it. You recognize different events where there's peace and confirmation regarding your husband. Is it like recognition to where somebody's supposed to be on the way in our family? It almost, the way that you said it almost sounds like you recognize a sense of duty.
I don't think it was, it's hard to put into words. It's more like, okay, I've wanted to do a comic for a long time. If I had any artistic ability, I would do a comic.
You can hire my 2 little kids. Both of them are illustrators.
There you go. I have wanted to do a comic of like Adam in the garden just happy with the animals, you know, and Eve like with a bubble over her head with like babies and, you know, like holding out the apple to him. Like, this is, you know, and I mean, it wasn't that I wasn't baby hungry. So that would be the wrong thing. It wasn't baby hungry. It was more like, I just say like my little guy haunted me. He, you know, it was just this.
Did you recognize at that time any inclination that it was going to be a boy first?
No, I never have known that.
Okay.
It was just a like urgency with this profound, like, you know, when God tells you what he wants you to do, you want to do it. So this desire was based in, this is what we're supposed to do. And it got pretty intense. So we had a baby sooner than my husband probably would have wanted to. And then we had his little brother, because we didn't want to just have one. So we had, and so we had two babies 18 months apart. Okay. And then we planned to wait while he went through and did his MBA and, you know, but I had my surprise that turned out to be identical twins that were born a year and a half later. So I had four in diapers together. And I knew that for me, with my like gung-ho, like my gung-ho personality also kind of needs to be doing something to feel, and it was, the Lord just made it so clear to me that like, motherhood. You're doing motherhood. So he let me put like my full gung-ho self into...
There's one thing, I mean, let's say that you're working for a big corporation. It's like, well, we're going to be growing at this pace right here. And we need somebody to be able to open up these centers that are there. We need to count on you. We're going to have this many people trained up. That could feel cool. It could feel like a sense of duty depending on what the project is. But all of a sudden recognition to where it's like, hey, God's sending my mission right here inside of my home.
Yeah, I haven't made the comparison. But
I think that's what a lot of people might miss, is recognition to where it's like, hey, right inside of your home, you can receive and recognize my mission's happening right here.
Yeah. And I never compared it to working, you know, because I think everyone has their own path, right? Yeah. And my sister, just older than me, didn't get married until much later. So I was always very sensitive to that path as well. And both have their hardships and both have their joys, you know. I've always been thankful for mine. But yes, it was very much, I guess I haven't expanded it beyond myself. I knew that for me, God knew who I was, and God was sending me a strong message of motherhood is like throw yourself into diapers
simultaneously. Did you ever feel it to be overwhelming?
Because it was brutally hard.
Because there's no way around the difficulty of it. Did you ever feel like this is too much?
Oh, yeah. I mean, but I was always so joyful too. Like it was such a blessing, and I just love babies and children so much that it was never more hard than it was fun.
Yeah. Well, there's a greater ability to experience joy when you make it through hardship. There's no way around it. There's a video that I watched, and it's probably like 15 plus years ago, and it still stays in my mind. I think it's called My Super Sweet 16 on one of these MTV channels. It's basically a 15-year-old girl turning 16, and she's obviously got off the charts wealthy parents, and putting together a party where it's like all the kids hanging out at the club in their outfits. They even get like a B-list rapper to show up and do some songs. Here comes the final part, and now they drop off a $60,000 convertible Lexus to her, and this little girl legitimately throws a furious fit because it's the wrong color, and yelling at her mom, "You ruined my life," as she's wearing her $13,000 earrings that they went shopping for. And I realized that little girl has been handicapped in her ability to feel joy.
Oh.
And I compare that to like my little.
Let me give you the comparison, can I?
Okay.
My sister will never stop teasing me about this. But she had my two little girls, my twins, when they were, I don't know, 6 or 7, you know, some age, and she had them in the car, and they stopped to get some fast food, which isn't something that my family, when you have a big family and one income, you know, I cook a lot and always have.
Make a big casserole.
Yeah. Sandwich. Yeah. Anyway, she pulled through the drive-through and ordered, and then handed them each back their little bag and their drink. And my girls together went, we get our own? If we ever went out, I ordered one big one and scooped it between them. And, like she's always teased me about that. Because like for them to get their own,
it was a joyous
meal
experience.
Was like, really? You know?
Yeah, so, I mean, really, there is so much like ability to feel joy that can be hampered if everything's just whatever you need. Let me just take care of it.
Yeah, I think it's good for us to go through. You know, it's good for us to not have every single want met. When I was being raised, my parents had more money than they really struggled with my older siblings. But by the time I was growing up, they had their business and they had a lot more than they had with their older siblings. And I remember one time my mom, but by the time she had me, she did not want toys in the house. She did not want, she was like done with all of that. And there were these like, the first time I saw those little race car tracks where you can race the cars, and I was such a little tomboy. I loved that. I just desperately wanted one of those. As much as I remember ever wanting anything, I wanted one of those race car tracks. Yeah. And I remember my mom saying with like this glee in her eye that I thought was so mean. She said, "I'm so glad there's something you want that you can't have." And I remember just being like, "You're horrible. You're the meanest ever." But now I really get it because I was raised with a lot more money than my older siblings. And she was like really happy to let me have that experience in a palpable way.
There's developmental benefits in it.
Absolutely.
Because I remember when I came back from my mission, there was a guitar amplifier that I wanted. And it took numerous months to be able to get $1,200 to purchase this amplifier, and I took it everywhere. I played it everywhere. But there was a satisfaction in, wow, if I had the ability to pick it up same day, I would have. But there is a satisfaction to where, all right, there's a level of sacrifice and putting off immediate gratification in order to obtain something.
Yeah, I think, I'm a little uncomfortable with, I don't want anyone to either think that I put myself on a pedestal or that my way is the right way or anyone else to, I talk a lot about pedestals are not our friends, So I'm hesitant to say this in some ways, but in other ways, like for parents maybe that are thinking about having more children or worried about it, I just feel like my kids are incredible people and being raised in this way where you are constantly sharing and negotiating and making things, it makes for good humans.
Okay.
I really think
when they get the built-in interaction, it does have a significant benefit. My older brother, 18 months older than me, 18 months younger than me, my next brother, and then
so if that were twins, that would be
in other words, out of the five of us, there's only 7 years difference between the oldest and the youngest of five. So there was a time where my mom was swimming in a sea of diapers and fecal matter as well.
Yep.
The first time I babysat 6 kids, and they were all close in age, like my own siblings, watched them for about 3 or 4 hours while parents went on a date. And they were all good kids, but it's like, holy crap, this is so much work.
Yeah.
Just keeping an eye on things for a few hours. As soon as I finished babysitting them, I called up my mom and I said, "I am so sorry."
Yeah. That's at some point your kids will appreciate you. I have a couple, I have one day that is blazoned in my memory forever. Sorry to be crass. It's called the day of poop because I had those 4 little kids and we had every single one of them had at least one massive poop problem. Like of epic proportions. Yeah. And you're just helpless. You can't clean up one thing without another thing happening. You can't, it was that was a day that I think I probably spent 2 days in tears trying to dig my way out of that. I had a little guy that he would put both of his hands down the back of his diaper and then flip his hands. And he did that in two different... Sorry, there's your visual. Now you know.
Okay, you're making me have a flashback to a video that I saw of what hippopotamuses do.
I was raising a hippopotamus.
Yeah, where they just flip their tail and it's a matter of like, guess who was here?
He also would that was his worst habit. It was when my girls were, and he would type on the computer. So that
Oh,
day
that's
it was
wonderful.
the toy room,
Oh,
all the
goodness.
toys and then the computer.
This is by
keys.
far the most bodily fluids in any of my podcasts.
Oh, there you go.
Thank
It's
you.
motherhood.
Oh, but there's-
it's motherhood. Welcome to it.
Yeah, because everybody was
Yeah.
convinced, let's just have another 13 babies.
Yeah.
And now they're like, ooh, is that what I'm signing up for?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I guess we need a different kind of like PG-13 warning, but and then yeah. Anyway, at the same time, my little girls were like cruising where they, and both of them stepped out of their diaper and walked all over in their diapers and walked all over the carpet in the little cage I had them in while I was trying to clean
That
up
is
the other
just
poo.
glorious.
And then my other son had his own issues going on that same day. So it is like, I really feel like I've earned my parenting stripes. If there's a 4-star general in motherhood, I'm working toward
now,
it.
I cannot outdo your stories with the magnificence of it, but I can share one that's kind of up there.
Is this where we want to go with this?
We're going. We have to now. We have to. When my oldest guy was about 5 years old, he's very visual, spatial. He was already putting together Lego sets pretty effectively at only age 4 or 5. Because he was already talking in full sentences, and he was out of diapers for some time. So he's either 4 or 5. Got him a Lego set for his birthday, and told him, "Hey, buddy, just wait for me to get home." Because we put together sets before where I just hand him a piece at a time and let him look at the picture, and he would put it in the right place with very little to no input from me. But I just wanted to make sure he was getting it right. He wouldn't wait. It was his uncle had sent him a Lego set with a police car and a police helicopter. He sat in his seat for like 5 or 6 hours straight until he finished it, only for his mom to realize he pooped himself. He would not get up from there. He would not get up from there until it was done, even if he has to sit in his own duty.
Yep. Been there, done that. Well, yeah. Kids are funny.
Yeah. So, let me ask you this. Okay. You're feeling that you naturally felt love from your parents. You naturally felt a prayer in your heart, even praying to God, your Heavenly Father, while you're catching those fast pitches. What started to translate into, I recognize now, a great love of the gospel, which is connected with your love of God. At what point would you say you developed a love of the gospel? Because that closeness you've already expressed, and I recognize that.
Yeah, and I don't know that I intellectually differentiated anything. It's all the same until you start. I'll just go to the next thing that comes to mind, if that's all right. I know that. So when my 4 little were little, and then we had my 5th a little while after. I had 2 miscarriages, and then had my 5th, and then had 2 more miscarriages. So I have these 4, and then 1. But during that time, well, I guess it was one. No, it was before my 5th. I started to feel impressed that I needed to homeschool my children, that I needed to teach my children myself. Now I grew up when that was not cool.
Yeah.
And we had one homeschool family in my ward, and it did not.
What weirdos?
Well, it didn't appeal to me. They were different. Right. And I now don't think they were different because they homeschooled. I think they homeschooled because they were different. Okay. It's a cause and effect that we've got reversed. Yeah. Right. But, and I'm like, how wonderful that they were home being loved instead of at school being mercilessly teased. Good for that family, But I had to really work with the Lord to get to where I felt okay about homeschooling. And so, and I had my answers along the way there, and then as we progressed, I started to feel more and more the weight of that. It really weighed heavily on me. The first day when my little guy, my oldest, was 5, and the school bus came down the street, and every little kid out of every house went and got on the school bus instead of mine, I was like, I can mess up these kids so bad. I was so stressed out. And so I really started to be serious about, I was, of course, reading everything, but really praying about, God, what do you want my children to learn? What do they need to learn? And that, I think it was when my son was 8 that I really formatted all of the answers. Sometimes it's kind of, I don't like the fire hose analogy because that's kind of violent, and it's not violent, but it is an intense outpouring of understanding. Okay. And I just was receiving so much information about what my children needed to learn and what really mattered. And so I formatted that into what I called celestial education as compared to terrestrial or telestial education, right? And I really was given the core elements of it are they need to learn that they are loved. But they need to learn that they are loved, and worthy, and not because of anything intrinsically, not because of anything about them or that they do, that their core is loved and worthy. Then they need to build on that to learn how to listen to the Spirit, learn how the Spirit speaks to them, how they connect with God, how they receive truth, how they receive direction. That was the actual curriculum that, they needed to learn. And then after that, it kind of went by age, what you focused on most, like up until 8, it was that lessons of love. Up until 8 to 12, the years of the Spirit, this was just kind of my encapsulation that I was given. Then after that, in those teenage years, they needed to learn what they are here to do and who they are and how to begin to prepare for that. And then, and then after that, I was given that then they need to learn to come into the presence of God. That came a little bit later for me. And so that's where I really started to go, okay, our math books are in service to these higher goals. Okay. Our English books are in service to these higher goals. So I really wanted to raise my children up in this way, if that makes sense.
Well, let me ask, were there things that would happen that were indications that you were having success in teaching that?
Well, so I should jump ahead a little bit more forward, because at the time I was receiving it and doing it, I thought it was about my children, right? Mm-hmm. I have since really learned, that's about me. Those are the things every single one of us needs to learn. And as I try to teach it to my children, I can't control what my children will or will not receive. And they each have their own personalities and and I think that I learned that as a parent, when I'm focusing too much on them and what I want them to learn, there's some fear there's some pressure there's, and I needed to, that didn't serve me well as a parent, and it certainly didn't serve my children. So once I realized, oh my gosh, this was all about me the whole time. I needed to learn all of these different lessons so that I could come into the presence of God. And then I raised my children in that. Then I'm the person raising my children.
Tell me what that meant to you. How would you conceptualize to return to the presence of God?
So this is where I am right now. I get a little bit. So once I started seeing other people talking about these things more and kind of being in communities of talking about coming into the presence of God, I started to feel kind of a concern that it would again create an incentive to do that so that people would know that you had done that. Or
he's one of them. She's one of those who's obtained it.
Yes.
In other words,
like again, either a pedestal or a feeling important. Like that was one of the things that was so important to me with this celestial education I learned is I don't want my children to feel important because of what they accomplish, because that's always a falsehood. Like Cub Scouts was so hard for me because it was antithetical to what I had received from God. Okay. I wanted my children to do things because they felt inspired to do it for the reward of doing what they were inspired to do. I didn't want them to stand up and
look at all these merit badges.
Get a thing on them and congratulations. It was just the opposite of what I was going for as a parent, And so, so I'm a little hesitant to I've never wanted to get into the, hey, I'm one of these, I'm not one of these, or hey, you're one of these. Like I kind of
give us one of what?
Well, like you said, one of these people that I recognized in myself that when I was having when I was starting to have more and more intense spiritual experiences, I had sort of a desire. I wanted to talk about them, but I've recognized that there was part of me that wanted to feel special in that. Yeah. And I'm really hesitant to want to give into that at all. So I guess I've intentionally gone to the other direction where I'm like, I don't know where the line is between wanting to feel special. And I more just want to I just want to testify that God wants us to seek him, but on God's timetable, not with a frantic urgency or a neediness. Like, I need to get this so I feel like I'm important, or I feel like God knows me, or I can feel special. Or so for where I am content I guess what I would want to say is, yes, everybody is invited on that path, and do it with a contentment and a patience and a trust in God, that God's timing is right and that God will lead you along, and that there's nothing lacking anywhere any of us are on that journey. Does that make sense? It's not a check off, move on. Now you've gone on to the next level. It's like when you are teaching the piano's behind you. When you're teaching your children piano, once they pass off a book, they go on to the next book because they're ready for it. But I would never want my children to say, oh, I'm in the 5th book and you're in the 3rd book. Or, oh, they're in the 5th book, I'm only in the 3rd book. Like, I just don't think that's how God works and how our progression with God works. So for me, I'm a little, this is just me personally, I'm uncomfortable with kind of like, there's this signpost, there's this experience that you can check off and kind of know where you are. That's just not how I work.
In other words, separating mentally because, well, I've achieved more than you.
Yeah, or just sometimes I've recognized that we desire to come into the presence of God so that we can feel more special and we can feel more chosen and we can feel more important. I recognize that because I experienced that and I had that desire, and it's not where I think is the ultimate. I think it's a necessary place we probably go through. At least I certainly did, but it's not where I want to stay or where I want to sit. If I testify of experiences with the Lord, I never want it to be so that I can testify, so that it's about me in any way. And I don't know how to differentiate that perfectly, because I think there's always a little bit of, hey, look at me. I just want it to be about, hey, God wants to know each of us, and we each have the opportunity to know God on a continual basis. And it's going to look different for each of us. The experiences are going to be different. The time frame is going to be different. And we don't need to impress one another. We don't need to, I just feel like it's hard for us as mortals, at least for me, to really know when I'm testifying of God and when I'm kind of testifying of myself a little bit.